Hello everybody, and welcome back. This is Falling Frontier. And Stellaris, you might want to watch your back because there are two hot new space games coming out of the publisher Hooded Horse, the publishing studio behind Old World. Some of you may remember it released on Epic this year. It's releasing on Steam next year as well. What I want to talk about today is this though, Falling Frontier. It's a sci-fi strategy game, which looks, in my opinion, beautiful. It favors intel, logistics, and other design factors, and overall, from what I've seen and from what I'm about to show you and talk to you about today, this game looks incredibly interesting. I'm so grateful to Hooded Horse for sending me an email and letting me know. This is not a sponsored video, but they did reach out, so thank you very much for that. Let's jump in. I'm going to show you a selection of different gameplay throughout and talk a bit about what this game is and why I'm excited about it. Firstly, what you can see here is us venturing out from what I imagine is our first spaceport. This is how the game will start for you. Venturing out for the first time, the year 2245, and exploring this world. Players who have played Stellaris will be familiar with this concept, but really any strategy game you could relate this to. This is your initial exploration period, sending out your scouts in Civilization 6, whatever it may be. And take a look on the right-hand side of the screen, and now moving through into the logistics screen, you can get a feel for how the initial exploration and finding the planets and making discoveries and missions and resources to build your empire and hopefully win these emerging colonial conflicts in space has just gotten a whole lot more intricate. Here, for example, is the ship design. One element of the game, combat. One specific element within it. We're looking at our chassis, our weapons, and our component. Take a look at all of these different options. This is alpha footage. This is Falling Frontier alpha footage version 0.1.9. And have a look at two things that I want to highlight. The intricacy and the detail. Right here we can see it again, from jump drives to crew quarters and everywhere in between. The level of detail on this ship is outstanding, right? Absolutely outstanding. I love it. But also, in my opinion, and this is my opinion, it doesn't look too overblown or overcomplicated. Looking at the system right now, it looks like something that after experiencing it for 10 or 15 minutes, it's probably something that I'm comfortable with. Now let's send our ship out to space and talk a bit more about a couple of other features. So what do we actually do? Well, as I say, you start in a new star system and you must go out and explore the planets, the moons, the asteroid fields, and everything. Not only to upgrade our ships for combat or logistics, but also supplies and reconnaissance, research and technologies, everything is there. Take a look at us here, moving through these asteroids, arriving on time. You're gonna see it get a little bit heated in a second. Here's a sneak peek at what some combat might look like. Again, I think it looks stunning. I also think the animations across the board are stunning, and I would encourage you to focus on them throughout the rest of this video. But what I'd like to focus on now, just to take a slight change of pace, is this, the world editor. This, by the way, is brand new footage, hot off the production line, as of about a few hours ago at the time of recording. What we're going to do is have a look at the world editor itself. I think, again, this highlights two things. Firstly, this scenario editor shows us that hopefully right from the get-go, we are going to have the option not just to skirmish, not just to start a campaign, but actually to really get in and be creative. And in my experience from playing and being very heavily involved in Humankind game this year since it released in August, these sort of modding community tools are so important, not just for the success of a game, but for building a community around it. So take a look at this scenario creator. You can add in any type of planet, change the size of the solar system, place them down, and as you'll see as we move through, you can tweak all of these individual details, everything from lighting to size to visual effects, rings, atmosphere, you name it. It's super exciting. And actually on a personal note, I have to admit, I'm not usually a sci-fi fan. I like the genre, don't get me wrong, but I usually prefer my strategy games to be historical. Stellaris was a huge exception for me when Paradox released that back in, goodness, 2017, I'm gonna guess. But really, This looks like it's taking it to the next level. Take a look at that as I spam down some moons in this world editor. But to draw out a bit and stop frothing over the little details, I think if a game like this can launch with a scenario editor like this, where, by the way, they've said, actually, to directly quote them, mods. Falling Frontier supports modding through an in-game scenario editor that allows players to design and share their own star systems, missions, and storyline campaigns. So you're not just creating a world and throwing me into it, you can design everything about this story. And as somebody who likes to occasionally tell the odd story, I think that's a huge, huge win. And the final thing here, just to draw out, is that even on the minor levels, every little bit of detail can be customized. And if we bounce out a bit and take a look at the system as a whole, you'll start to get a feel for how that translates through. I want to now change pace a little bit and talk about some of the game mechanics that we haven't quite covered yet. It's all fine and good, of course, to design a world like this, but Jumbo, what do I do with it? You might be asking, and rightly so. We've already talked a little bit about ship design, but just to reiterate, this game at launch is intending to have over 20 different ship types, from the wonderful frigates and destroyers right the way through to battle cruisers, and of course all of those civilian exploration, research, blah 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 ships that I'm sure we should expect. But also, of course, just like the modding, we can create our own, from weapons to modules and everything in between. Another important element, of course, no ship is complete without its crew. Let's jump back to some actual gameplay, leave the editor, and talk about the people piloting the ship. Because, of course, they matter a lot. And in similar vein to something like Stellaris, have a look here at the bottom left, you can see that there are individuals with various roles, of course, from captains to engineers, and they all have different skills. Now, the development team quote, "Your command crews are not abstract and impersonal entities, but rather named individuals with ranks, portraits, and identities. Each officer has their own trait and abilities, making personal choice a critical factor." End quote. Now, I think that matters. Maybe not as much as some of the other big elements that we've talked about already, but it is another layer of customization, and hopefully it can add that personal feel to it. You can see the commanders, the people in these ships, when I'm clicking on them there. If we can build stories around them as well, and if they play crucial roles, if they really are highly specialized, highly unique, and interesting, then that will help just add another layer to the experience. I'll be very interested to see how that plays out in practice, because a lot of the time, some of these features can simply turn into click this person for plus 10% science. So we'll have to see how it plays out in practice. It certainly interests me about as much as this beautiful battle screen, which is incredibly, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. Let's move through and talk about one other huge part of the game that we haven't discussed, and that's logistics and intel. You might think, logistics, yawn, bear with me. Logistics and intel have been highlighted as two of the key parts that separate this real-time strategy game from others. Yes, you've got combat. Yes, you're building a world, but also it's about logistics and intel. Let me share some information with you. Wars are won and lost with logistics. A weaker opponent may choose to play more of a guerrilla warfare, raiding supply depots, blocking colonies, but otherwise not really being too forceful, whereas of course a strong player can bring their massive unstoppable fleet. It's important to consider that movement, and if they're really designing the game to build to that was a quote by the way, that's a very exciting thing. The other factor of course is that intel. So we can use a lot of civilian ships and stations, like probes and scouts and recons, to explore and monitor all of the planets that we've seen in this video designed, navigated, and explored. Recon stations in this game can scan areas passively for limited information or actively if you'd like to be a little more involved. And of course, the enemy is doing the same. Information is everything. That concludes my look today at Falling Frontier. It releases in Q2 of 2022, so actually not that far away, potentially only the matter of a few months. I'm very interested to follow it along. I'm going to be following it, and I hope covering it on the channel. if I can get a break from all of the other wonderful strategy games that are out or coming out in 2022. Thank you very much for watching. My name's been JumboPixel. I'll catch you in the next one.